Hello guys, how are you?
I'm Hardeep Singh. Welcome back to your own YouTube channel. IELTS updates and recent exams. For more updates related to recent IELTS exam writing test topics, listening, reading, practice test, and speaking, you got guesswork. Please, guys, participate in everyday listening and reading practice test to achieve your desired band score in your actual IELTS exam. Please hit the like and subscribe button. Press the bell icon for the upcoming notifications. Don't forget like, subscribe and share my YouTube channel and my Facebook page, IELTS updates and recent exams.
Part 1.
You will hear a man telephoning an employment agency to register for job opportunities. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 10.
Able Employment, how may I help you?
I saw your advertisement in the Daily Gazette,
Oh, yes.
and I'd like to register with you. I'm a student, but I've got the long holiday coming up.
Certainly. I'll just get the form ready. OK, let me take your details.
Sure.
Can I have your full name?
It's Bowen. James Bowen. Bowen.
Right. And your address, please?
Well, just now I'm staying at the youth hostel,
I see.
but I'm moving into a flat on Friday.
Well, give me that one then.
It's 4 Lion, like the animal, Road, Melford, MF4 5JB.
OK. And then I need to have a phone number for you.
I don't know the number at the flat yet, but I could give you my mobile. That's 09954 721 822. Would that do?
For the time being. But if you can let me know your new number when you can.
Of course.
Now, qualifications. What qualifications have you got? I mean, post-16 qualifications.
Well, I stayed on at school till 18 and got my A-levels.
Fine. Anything else? You said you were a student.
Yes, and then I've done 2 years at college, so I've got my history diploma, though I don't know how useful that'll be for getting a job.
Well, it depends. Everything counts in some way.
And I also did an IT course this year, and that got me my computer skills certificate, which I certainly hope is relevant. It's different anyway. That's all really.
That's quite a good range. And what about on the practical side? What work experience have you got?
Well, not too much, because I've mainly been studying.
Yes.
But 2 summers ago I worked just as general assistant in a hospital for about 3 months. It was quite hard, but very interesting.
OK. Anything else?
If you include part-time work,
Oh, yes.
I've often worked in the college holidays as a tour guide, showing visitors round. That's quite enjoyable, meeting people.
I'm sure. Now on to interests. There's space here for 2. What would you say?
2. Well, I like various sports, but I suppose we should put that I'm in the swimming club. I'm pretty committed to that.
Yes, that sounds good. And for the other one, something different?
I'm very keen on music too, and I love playing piano. I've been doing that for over 10 years now.
Yes, I'll put that down. Well, that's more or less it for the time being.
Uh-huh.
Just one more thing. What I do need is your availability.
Oh, yes. The college term finishes on June the 20th, and then I'm going to visit my parents. But I can be back and ready to start on June the 28th, if that seems okay.
I'm sure it is. Now, what happens next is that I process this information, and then...
That is the end of part 1.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to Part 2.
You will hear the organiser of a group holiday talking to the group before they arrive at their destination. First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 16.
Thank you, everybody, for your attention. I hope you're all looking forward to arriving at the town. I thought you might like to know a few things while we're still on the coach, and it'll help to pass the time on our journey. OK, as you know, we're staying at the Park Hotel. It's comfortable and friendly. We're booked in for 3 nights. Now, I'm aware that not everyone wants breakfast there, so if you do want it, you should tell the hotel that you do the night before. We're making our own arrangements for dinner each evening, and there's a cafe open at the hotel most of the time if you want a drink or a snack. There's also a very pleasant lounge on the ground floor with a collection of fascinating paintings. And then I hope you're going to enjoy the various activities that are lined up. However, I do have to tell you that there have been some changes since the original programme. For one, because it's been restored and is therefore closed to the public, we won't be going to the castle after all, I'm afraid. However, there's plenty else to see, and the gardens are still open. Something we've been able to add to the programme is for Saturday, when a local historian will give us a lecture on famous people from the town. I don't know who that includes yet. So, to free up the time for that, we've made another little amendment and changed the trip to the antique show that was due for then on to Sunday. Actually, I think that'll make for a more relaxed programme anyway. We're leaving the rest of Sunday free for you to wander around as you wish. One place you might like to try is the art gallery, because it's got a huge display of old postcards. You can't really send them home to your family and friends, but it's interesting and sometimes funny to see what people used to send. Well, that's the lot on changes.
Now you have some time to look at questions 17 to 20.
I thought it could be useful to try and get your bearings now, before we actually arrive, so I'll give you a few pointers on your maps. OK, first things first, the Park Hotel, because I assume you'll want to deposit your luggage before anything else. We'll be driving into the town from the west and stopping at the bus station. To get to the hotel, just go straight down the high street towards the railway bridge, and after the bridge, if you go left, you'll soon see it on the right. As I say, it's a nice place. You can check in, see your rooms, relax a little. There are a couple of interesting little shops nearby. There aren't any internet facilities at the hotel, I'm afraid, so if you want to send any emails, you'll need to get yourselves to the internet cafe. In fact, if you want to do that first, it's easy because it's near the bus station, on the corner towards the right of Curtis Lane and Kramer Street. So, once you've done that, well, if you do that, then I suppose you'll be ready to do a bit of exploring. You've got your basic maps, but you may want to get more information, and the Tourist Information Office is the place to do that. It's up around the train station area. From the bus station, you could go up any of the streets to the left, Cadogan Road, Earl Street or Duke Street. The office is directly facing the train station, on the corner with Earl Street. They've got all sorts of brochures and leaflets about local attractions and tickets for sale. They even sell some locally produced jams and chocolates. And a last pointer at this stage is our venue for dinner tonight, the Royal House restaurant. This is conveniently located in the very centre of town. In fact, you'll no doubt pass it as you're walking around beforehand. In relation to the bus station, it's not far. Going down the High Street, if you pass the corner with Cromwell Road, then the next junction is a crossroads with Duke Street and Runton Road, and it's there. You'll be able to see its rather grand entrance over on the left corner. The food and the service there are both excellent, so it promises to be an enjoyable evening. Well, we're just coming into the town now, so...
That is the end of part 2.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 3.
You hear two students, Charlotte and Damien, telling their tutor about an architecture project they are doing for university. First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 26.
Well, Charlotte and Damien, what have you decided to do for your architectural project?
We are going to do a study of the first project that famous architect Wilson Prescott designed.
Wilson Prescott, who designed the Charleston Towers in New York and the University Library building here in Benchley, what was his first project? When he first graduated from the University of Manchester in 1972, he worked for a small firm of architects in Buckinghamshire and in 1973 was given the project of designing a private house for a local family called the Bartletts. So it's called Bartlett House. The house is still standing and is currently for sale for the first time since it was built.
Charlotte and I went to inspect it, and it's still in great shape with its original flooring, bathrooms, and kitchen. We wanted to get a photographic record of it for the university. That was the main reason we went there originally. We heard it was on the market, and we are quite sure that whoever the new owners are, they will completely refurbish it.
Isn't there a preservation order on it? There should be, of course, but no, there isn't. The real estate agent looked a bit concerned when we told him why we were there. A preservation order would make the property much more difficult to sell. People don't like buying houses that restrict them from making alterations. Just the historical value of the photographs is probably enough to base your paper on. What else did you have in mind?
We were quite amazed when we saw the house. The exterior is so much like the work he designed later in his career. He used the same long strip windows in Charleston Towers. In every part of the house, there are reminders of later work that he has done. Look at this photo. Do the columns holding up the extended roof here remind you of anything?
They are the same shape as the ones used in this building in Barcelona. And look, it's the same slate used to cover the bricks that he used on the walls of the university library 30 years later. This is very interesting. He must have only been in his early 20s at the time.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 27 to 30.
and Charlotte has tracked down the original floor plans. She went to the local council chambers and went through the archives to find the original submission.
Good detective work, Charlotte. Of course, they are the original plans. There would have been modifications during the build. So what we have decided to do is make this project into a video presentation so we can visually compare the original house and plans with his later work. Can we do that on this course? Or can it only be a written project? As long as you have an acceptable amount of text and dialogue, certainly. If you submitted it in paper form, it would need to be highly illustrated anyway, so a video project is a good idea. Are you able to do it at a high technical standard? It would need to be quite sophisticated.
I have quite a lot of experience in editing digital moving images, and you don't really need much equipment to put it together. I have access to the software we need. So in a few hours, I could edit a 10-minute film with voiceover, text, and moving and still images.
It sounds like you are on top of this, but I'd like to see a preliminary version before you submit the project, just so I can be sure that you are on the right track. Say 2 weeks before the due date? I think we should be able to do that. Before that, I could give you a complete list of the contents to read as well. We don't want to do all this work and then be told it's not good enough. Have you thought about doing an interview with Wilson Prescott? He is semi-retired these days, but I know he still gives interviews.
We were considering that, but we have no idea how to get in contact with him. If we just call his firm as a couple of university students, the message might not even get passed on to him.
Let me speak to the Dean of Architecture. I know he knows him quite well. He might be able to get in contact with him for you. Let me just take a note of that. I'll let you know how I get on at next week's tutorial.
That is the end of part 3.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 4.
You will hear a part of a lecture about the history of printing. First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 34.
The history of printing is usually said to have begun in Europe in the 15th century. But there was a lot of printing going on well before then, mainly in Asia. Almost 600 years before that, Chinese monks were using a process called woodblock printing, where carved wooden blocks are coated with ink and pressed into paper. The earliest book that still exists from this time is the Diamond Sutra, printed in 868 AD, which was discovered in 1900 and is now in the British Library in London. This technique of printing also spread to Korea and Japan, where both wooden and metal blocks were used to produce Buddhist and Taoist scripts. In about 1040, a Chinese peasant called Bi Sheng came up with the idea of movable type. Little is known of Sheng himself, due to his humble origins, but his method of printing, which involved the creation of hundreds of small individual pieces of type made of baked clay, was recorded by a scholar and scientist called Shen Kuo, who lived at the same time. This method survived by occasionally being used in some parts of China during the 12th and 13th centuries because of Shen Kuo's writings, but it wasn't in mainstream use in China or in other countries until centuries later. In any case, though there are written mentions of this technique being used, no early examples of the printed result, or even the ceramic printing characters, have survived. 200 years later, an official in the Chinese court, Wang Zhen, came up with the same idea, but this time the pieces were made of wood. Sometime later, Koreans started casting metal characters. However, block printing remained the dominant form, probably due to the nature of the East Asian languages, which do not have phonetic letters, but require a different pictogram character for every single word. So instead of less than 30 characters, as in European languages, thousands of pieces were required for Chinese. It was not until the idea hit Europe in the 15th century that printing with movable type really took off.
Before you hear the rest of the lecture, you have some time to look at questions 35 to 40.
In Europe, books were still either being handwritten or using some form of the woodblock technique, both of which were very labor-intensive. This resulted in books being highly expensive and only available to the elite. Johannes Gutenberg was a German goldsmith and craftsman who began experimenting with improvements in printing in the middle of the 15th century and is credited with the invention of movable type. The fact that Gutenberg was able to create such an impressive new technology completely independently does have some scholars scratching their heads. Gutenberg left no written record of how he came up with his ideas. At the time, there were active trade routes along the Silk Road to Europe, and it is not outside the realms of possibility that some or all of the idea of movable type could have been passed on to him from the East. Whatever the case, he was certainly the first in Europe to cast the individual upper and lowercase letters required to print, and he also invented a new ink using linseed oil, which was a major improvement on the water-based inks used in the past. However, it was the wooden printing press itself which was the major breakthrough and truly original. He used components and systems found in winemaking and paper-making presses to create a mechanized process to put ink onto paper. This meant books could be mass-produced. Mass production not only sped up the process of printing, but reduced its costs enormously. Texts were no longer restricted to religious tracts and the publishing of government materials. Scientific discoveries, philosophy, history, and all forms of literature, including works of satire and sedition, exploded around Europe to an extent never witnessed before. The invention of the printing press changed the whole social and economic landscape in Europe. It was one of the major influences on the Renaissance and the Reformation, fueled social and political change in many countries, and published advances in science which led to the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. The closest comparison we could use to illustrate its effects would be the influence of the Internet today.
That is the end of part 4.
You now have half a minute to to check your answers.
So guys, don't forget like, subscribe and share my YouTube channel and my Facebook page, IELTS updates and recent exams. For more updates related to recent IELTS exam writing test topics, listening, reading, practice test and speaking, you got guesswork. Please guys, participate in everyday new IELTS listening and reading practice tests to achieve your desired band score in your actual IELTS exam. For more IELTS material, visit my official website www.ieltsupdatesandrecentexams.com. The link is given below in the description. If you need PDF files of latest IELTS material, then please join my Telegram channel. So guys, please write your score below the comment section. Again, thanks for listening. God bless you all guys. Stay tuned, stay safe.